its sort of political moves towards a sense of political independence has limited the resources that they've been able to invest, and obviously there's tremendous hope here in Fiji that with the home games we might finally be able to prevail over Tahiti and New Caledonia, who we see as the likely contenders. Is there another country who we're missing that Fiji should be concerned about, who may be able to sneak through?
Well, I'm sure there are going to be a few surprises, but I'd just like to pick up that point as well, Charlie, because indeed just watching Team Fiji come through here tonight and this rapturous applause, this sort of spontaneous noise that erupted in the stadium tonight, surely that is going to make the difference between a gold and a silver medal. You know, 0.5 of a second in a track meet, a swim perhaps, or a spike at the volleyball enclosure. I'm sure that's really going to do a serious amount of good for Fiji's prospects.
As well, obviously, the opportunity to have trained on what are a lot of new facilities. Now, I know that the athletes from around the region, as and when they arrive, have been given and will be given the opportunity to train on this new facilities, but there's nothing like familiarity to the specific conditions of a country, the specific conditions of a track or a pool.
Comes from the Pacific at its best, the CD available right throughout the games.
Well, already we've been assessing this particular track here, Charlie, having a chat to Bob Snow, actually the Oceanian statistician, who says, of course, it's been massively refurbished ahead of competition. But if anything, the only criticism, and a minor one at that, is it's just a little firm. And there is some suggestion that could lead to a few minor injury concerns, but nevertheless a very quick track as a consequence, and we could see some sensational times here. And don't forget, of course, you're going to see it all live right here across the next 2 weeks. We're bringing you a massive amount of television. The opening ceremony, of course, to kick it off, this big party, this celebration of 40 years of South Pacific Games. But believe me, when the competition gets hot, we're going to be right there.
Let me just explain what you're seeing on your screen now. These are ladies from the St. Joseph's Secondary School here in Suva. Now, in this Adopt a Country program, St. Joseph's have been given Fiji, and this is their challenge to Team Fiji. This is them challenging them in a very traditional way, as they did in times gone by when the warriors went out to battle. The women folk issued the challenge to the men folk, and here St. Joseph's, the girls from the St. Joseph's Secondary School, just about to lay this challenge to the members of Team Fiji.
Well, I don't know about you, Charlie Charles, but I think I get the point, and certainly a very moving encouragement there to Team Fiji.
You could see it in their faces. This wasn't something they were just walking through. They really felt right to the absolute fibre of their being the significance of this, and it's sort of reaching back in time to generations past, and the electricity that flowed through that presentation, I'm sure, is going to really move the Team Fiji audience that was directed to.
This routine was choreographed by Manor Singatani. And now we have a very special light show, especially for you, for the first time in Fiji, and of course in the 2003 South Pacific Games, from ELS Australia and Kurt Wagner.
The opening ceremony of the 12th South Pacific Games continuing in Suva, Fiji. We've seen a lot of traditional performances tonight, but perhaps a statement of the future here as Fiji looks toward a bold new feature and a magnificent laser light show now lighting up the National Stadium here in Suva, Fiji. This warm night as the Pacific gathers to celebrate 40 years of South Pacific Games.
There are 17 loudspeakers around the corners of the National Stadium surface, and they are pounding out a huge noise. And underneath each of the stadium lights, you can see big new special banks of this specialist lighting have been set up, and it's all coordinated with this wonderful Pacific music. A truly, truly wonderful spectacle.
Mangoto.
Did you enjoy that light show, especially for you?
Well, it might be
We'll have
raining
more
in
for you in the
Fiji, but I
next 2
think the
hours or
effect
so.
on the light show
Thank you
here
very
has been
much,
quite
and
magnificent. And
show
Charlie,
your
we're looking
appreciation
ahead
boys
to
who
a
came
lot
from
more.
Canada
We've
and
enjoyed the
Australia.
lights and a futuristic
Have a
look
big
into
show of
Fiji's
appreciation.
future, but a lot more to come, I believe.
Well, the opening ceremony is being laid out in front of us now. It's going to pay homage, obviously, to the Fijian culture, but also separately pay homage to the many communities who have found their homes in Fiji and who've contributed so positively to the makeup of the country as we know it today.
To all the children, children of the nation, we come together, all of us Polynesian. Open up our hearts to the others. Open up, oh my brothers and my sisters, and let me see a smile shining on your face. Let me feel the love shining in this place. Let the spirit and the power of the Aina take us back to the mana. Make it aloha, ya, ya. Make it aloha, no, ya. Aloha, ya, ya. Make it aloha, no, ya. Orinetia.
the scene at the National Stadium in Suva on the occasion of the opening ceremony of the 12th South Pacific Games. Welcome everyone. Hope you're enjoying it as much as we are here, high up in this wonderful complex, which of course has been refurbished for this very special occasion, the 40th anniversary of the South Pacific Games. We're still enjoying this light and sound show here. And the National Stadium, as you can see, bathed in this beautiful blue light as the speakers dotted around the stadium just crank it up here in Suva.
We are Fiji. Fiji's unique multi-ethnic society in the Pacific.
And now an important component of this opening ceremony, a tribute to the various cultural aspects, the dynamics of this wonderful country.
This artistic journey is reflected before you.
And the voice you were hearing was the South Pacific Games Director of Ceremonies, Bernadette Brown-Ganilau, who not only is your Mistress of Ceremonies today, but she's also the person who has, over the last 18 months, conceived of the whole structure and concept of the opening ceremony. We're looking across there at a waterfall that has been created just about on the halfway line of the embankment side of the National Stadium, and that will feature prominently, we are told, in several of the stories that are played out in this opening ceremony sequence, which, as I've said, is going to pay tribute first and foremost to the distinct indigenous culture of Fiji, but also the waves of people who've settled in Fiji from overseas and who have made this country what it is today in terms of a picture of multiracial harmony and prosperity. Representatives from all of the significant communities will be making presentations, will be making dance presentations during this opening ceremony, with the idea that if you were new to Fiji and you were watching this ceremony, you'd have a very strong idea of the interlocking nature of the communities here in Fiji, each one helping the other forward.
It's been a sellout here at the National Stadium in Suva, and big queues when we first arrived here this afternoon. Such has been the interest in this spectacle, and now the cultural component, and this particular section to evoke the first Fijian and the arrival in these beautiful islands those many thousands of years ago.
This element of the presentation has been choreographed by Semi Baula. You'll know him from the Pacific Harbour Cultural Centre. We've got a troop of warriors and a war canoe, and they are to be followed by representatives from each of the 15 traditional provinces that make up Fiji.
Ian Drewer there in the background.
And the Drewer obviously has a deep significance not only within Fijian culture but also across the Pacific, because the Pacific obviously was peopled by seabound migration, tremendous similarities in the designs of the traditional canoes, and very close ties between Fiji and Tonga in that respect.
Are representatives of the 15 provinces of Fiji.
It's amazing to think, as you heard that little burst of recording of the session speech, that the first games in 1963, Fiji was still a colony of Great Britain, and the second games hosted here in 1979, Fiji was only 9 years old.
And of course in those games Charlie, it was Fiji that put its hand up after, I think it was Vanuatu, which announced it couldn't about a year out in late 1978, I believe, suggesting it wasn't in a position at that stage to be able to host the games. Of course, Vanuatu went on to host the mini games some years later, but Fiji stepping up to the mark back in 1979 and took over responsibility for those games.
And the druas being propelled in front of the grandstand where the dignitaries are seated, and obviously this will be of enormous significance to the guest of honor today, His Excellency the President of Fiji, Ratu Josepho Iloilo, because it was to his chiefly village of Visese that legend has it that the first Fijians arrived. And the organizing committee of the games do have a challenge in front of them, preparing an opening ceremony that does justice to the many communities in Fiji, without overemphasizing one and ignoring the other.
And the theme this evening, of course, as you say, Charlie, is We Are Fiji, and all its glory tonight as it celebrates this opening ceremony.
There are 12 warriors escorting the drua, and we're told that the numbers 12, 22 and 40 will be of great significance tonight. And it's representatives from the 15 provinces paying their respect to the President and High Chief Ratu Josepho Iloilo. 12 obviously because it's the 12th South Pacific Games, 22 because there are 22 countries present. Every country that could compete is competing for the first time in the history of the Games, and 40 because it's the 40th anniversary of the first Games back in 1963. So we'll see those three numbers repeat themselves through the sequence and staging of the choreography tonight.
Great honour, of course, for the various performers here as well to be selected for this special occasion with Fiji on show. A big responsibility for everyone involved, and I'm sure for them it's their big moment as well.
And as the drua proceeds in an anti-clockwise direction around the running track of the National Stadium, we can see in the foreground the ladies from the Andi Dakambao School coming onto the pitch. Now this is very significant because it was the ladies from ACS who performed the ceremonial dance at the opening ceremony of the first South Pacific Games 40 years ago. So they were the obvious choice to repeat that honour for the third Games that Fiji were to host this year. ACS, of course, a boarding school for ladies and a huge, very famous educational establishment.
The students and teachers of the Andi Dakambao School of Sawani open up the cultural entertainment for the 2003 South Pacific Games.
Coming on now from the left, students from the Queen Victoria School, which in some ways is a twin of ACS, and they will be playing a very major part in the opening ceremony sequence to come. And you can imagine the tremendous honour it will be for these ladies to be part of this opening ceremony. Certainly a story that will be told and retold through generations to come. People in Fiji have a tremendous sense of occasion, tremendous sense of honor, and they will certainly be very prepared for the momentous responsibility that the organizers have given them to do justice really to the tribute that's to be paid to the people, the Fijian people, as part of this opening ceremony program.
And in a more general sense as well, Charlie, I'm sure there's a great deal of curiosity in the rest of the Pacific about some of these issues.
As we take a sweep across from right to left of the National Stadium, you can see that everybody is still in their seats. There's a hushed air of expectancy as we wait for this first tribute to be paid to Fiji and the Fijians.
Drew in the background, of course. Very famous feature of those early days here in Fiji. The stories of legend. And now the